What if I told you that the most powerful weapon you will ever possess isn't money, connections, or talent? It's your mind. Every single day, you make thousands of decisions. You manage fear, doubt, distraction, and chaos, often without even realizing it. And somewhere, buried beneath the noise of notifications, stress, and routine, is a version of you that is sharper, calmer, more focused, and completely unstoppable. That version isn't a fantasy. It's not reserved for Elon Musk, Serena Williams, or some monk on a Himalayan mountaintop. That version is you. Once you learn how to train the one thing that controls everything else, your mind.
Welcome to a high-performing mind. Strengthen your mind and live your best life. I'm your narrator, and over the next 35 minutes, we're going to go on a journey together through neuroscience, psychology, real-world stories, and practical exercises that will permanently change how you think, how you perform, and how you live. Stay with me. By the end of this audiobook, you won't just feel inspired. You will have a blueprint. And blueprints change buildings and lives. To truly bridge the gap between watching a video and mastering these results, you need the full blueprint in your hands. I've linked the original book below so you can claim the exact techniques and hidden insights that didn't make it into this summary. And let's begin.
Before we dive in, let me walk you through exactly what we're going to explore today. Because a high-performing mind, like a well-designed building, needs a clear architecture. Here's your roadmap. In Chapter 1, we'll explore the neuroscience of mental performance, how your brain actually works, why most people misuse it, and how neuroplasticity gives every one of us the ability to literally rebuild our minds at any age. In Chapter 2, we go into the 4 pillars of mental strength, the core disciplines that separate ordinary thinkers from elite performers. We're talking about focus, emotional regulation, resilience, and mental clarity. In Chapter 3, we explore the war against distraction. Because in a world engineered to hijack your attention, protecting your focus is an act of rebellion, and we'll give you the tools to win that war. In Chapter 4, we tackle stress, pressure, and the high-performance mindset. How to stop fear from being your enemy and start using it as jet fuel. In Chapter 5, we look at habits, identity, and the architecture of a great life. Why your daily routines are actually writing your destiny, 1 hour at a time. And in Chapter 6, we close with your 30-day mental upgrade, a practical, science-backed plan you can start the moment this audiobook ends. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, a parent, an athlete, or someone who simply wants to get more out of life, this audiobook was written for you. Now, Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Neuroscience of Mental Performance. How your brain actually works, and why most people never use it right. Here's something that will immediately change how you see yourself. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can form up to 10,000 connections with other neurons. That's roughly 100 trillion synaptic connections, more than the number of stars in 1,000 Milky Way galaxies. You are, quite literally, carrying the most complex structure in the known universe inside your skull. So why do most people feel like they're running on 20% battery? Always foggy, always reactive, never fully switched on. The answer is simple. They've never been taught to use what they have. Let me introduce you to the concept that will be the foundation of everything in this audiobook. Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. For a long time, scientists believed the adult brain was fixed, a finished machine that simply ran its program until it wore out. We now know that was completely wrong. Your brain is plastic. It adapts, it rewires, it grows. Every time you learn a new skill, the relevant neural pathways thicken, like a dirt path that gets paved when enough feet walk it. Every time you repeat a thought or behavior, that neural pathway gets stronger, faster, more automatic. Here's a real-world example to make this vivid. In a landmark study published in the journal Nature, researchers at University College London scanned the brains of London taxi drivers, people who had memorized the complex, winding street map of one of the world's most intricate cities. What they found was remarkable. The hippocampus, the brain region responsible for spatial navigation and memory, was measurably larger in taxi drivers than in the general population. And the longer a driver had been working, the larger their hippocampus was. The brain had physically grown in response to mental demand. Now, think about this. If cab drivers can grow brain tissue through deliberate practice of navigation, what happens to your brain when you deliberately practice focus, emotional regulation, and strategic thinking?
The answer is the same. Your brain grows, it strengthens, it performs at a higher level. But here's the flip side, and this is crucial. Neuroplasticity works in both directions. Every time you scroll mindlessly through social media instead of solving a problem, every time you give in to anxiety instead of pressing forward, every time you choose the easy distraction over the hard discipline, you are also building neural pathways, just not the ones you want. Your brain is constantly changing. The only question is, who's in charge of the renovation? Let's talk about the two systems that run your mental life, what Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman famously called System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional, and unconscious. It's the part of your brain that catches a ball, reads a face, or feels fear in the dark. System 1 is brilliant. It keeps you alive, but it's also impulsive, biased, and easily manipulated. System 2 is slow, deliberate, logical, and effortful. It's the part that solves math problems, plans a business strategy, or talks you down from a bad decision at 2 a.m. High-performing minds don't just have a powerful System 2. They know when to use each system, and they train both, deliberately and consistently.
A fighter pilot in a dogfight cannot afford to consciously process every input. System 1 takes over, rapid, intuitive, immediate. But that pilot's System 1 is highly trained. Thousands of flight hours have written the instincts into neural hardware so reliable they function like software. A chess grandmaster sees the board not as 64 individual squares, but as patterns, recognized instantly by System 1, refined by years of System 2 analysis. Magnus Carlsen, the world chess champion, once said that at the highest level, the game is won before the clock even starts, in the pattern recognition built during years of deliberate study. The lesson? Elite performance is the product of training System 2 until it becomes System 1. Or, in plain English, you practice hard things until they become automatic. One more concept before we move to the pillars: the default mode network, or DMN. When your brain isn't focused on a specific task, it doesn't go quiet. It activates a specific network of regions associated with mind-wandering, self-reflection, and daydreaming. This is the default mode network. Research from Harvard shows that people spend nearly 47% of their waking hours with their minds not on what they're actually doing, and that mind-wandering is consistently associated with lower happiness and productivity. But here's the interesting part. The default mode network isn't your enemy. Controlled mind-wandering, what researchers call constructive internal reflection,
is where creativity lives, where insights are born, where your brain quietly solves problems in the background.
High-performing minds learn to toggle the DMN on and off deliberately. They focus hard when focus is required, and they allow strategic mental rest when it's time for synthesis and creativity. You'll learn exactly how to do that, starting in Chapter 3. But first, the 4 pillars. Chapter 2. The 4 pillars of mental strength. Think of your mind as a building. Any building, no matter how grand its exterior, is only as strong as its foundational pillars. If even one pillar is compromised, the structure is at risk. The 4 pillars of a high-performing mind are 1. Focus. 2. Emotional regulation. 3. Resilience. 4. Mental clarity. Let's go through each one in depth. Pillar 1. Focus. In 2004, the average human attention span was 12 seconds. By 2023, studies showed it had dropped to approximately 8 seconds, shorter than a goldfish, according to Popular Science headlines. While that specific statistic has been debated, the underlying trend is undeniable. Modern life is systematically destroying our ability to concentrate. And concentration is everything. Without focus, intelligence is wasted. Without focus, talent is squandered. Without focus, time, your most finite and precious resource, evaporates. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, defines 2 types of work. Deep work, cognitively demanding tasks performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your abilities to the limit and create real value. Shallow work, logistically non-demanding tasks performed while distracted. Emails, meetings, social scrolling. His research found that most knowledge workers spend less than 4 hours per day in genuine deep work. Elite performers, the ones who rise to the top of their fields, protect and maximize deep work time, often scheduling 4 to 6 hours of uninterrupted focus as the centerpiece of their day. Bill Gates famously took annual Think Weeks, 7 days in isolation, with no meetings, no calls, just books and deep thinking. Those retreats produced some of Microsoft's most important strategic pivots. The action for you? Start small. Commit to one single 90-minute block of completely distraction-free deep work tomorrow. Phone off, notifications silenced, a single task. Watch what happens. Pillar 2. Emotional regulation. The ability to understand, manage, and constructively direct your emotions is perhaps the most underrated form of intelligence in existence. Dr. Daniel Goleman, who popularized the concept of emotional intelligence, found that EQ, not IQ, was the strongest predictor of success in leadership, relationships, and long-term happiness. In his analysis of hundreds of companies, emotional intelligence was responsible for nearly 90% of what differentiated top performers from average ones at senior levels. Why? Because emotions are contagious. They affect decision-making. They determine how you treat people under pressure. They either sharpen your judgment or cloud it completely. Consider this. 2 surgeons of identical technical skill are in the operating room. A complication arises. Unexpected, dangerous, requiring rapid problem solving. Surgeon A panics. Her cortisol levels spike. Her prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational decision-making, is partially hijacked by the amygdala's threat response. She hesitates, makes a suboptimal choice. Surgeon B takes a single conscious breath. He's trained mindfulness for 2 years. His parasympathetic nervous system engages. Cortisol stays manageable. His prefrontal cortex remains online. He assesses, decides, and acts with clarity. same complication, different outcomes, different minds. Emotional regulation isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about not being controlled by them. There's a profound difference.
Pillar 3. Resilience. Resilience is the capacity to absorb shock, adapt, and return to peak function, or grow beyond it. The science here is fascinating. Research by Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, the father of positive psychology, identified that resilience is not a fixed trait. It can be learned. It can be trained. Seligman's PERMA model identifies 5 pillars of psychological resilience: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. Each of these can be cultivated deliberately. Viktor Frankl survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. In his extraordinary book, Man's Search for Meaning, he documented how inmates who maintained a sense of purpose, even in the most horrific circumstances imaginable, survived at dramatically higher rates than those who lost meaning. Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." That space, that gap between what happens to you and how you react, is the training ground of resilience. Every time you consciously choose your response instead of reacting automatically, you expand that space. You build the muscle. Pillar 4. Mental clarity. Clarity is the difference between a laser and a light bulb. Both emit light, but a laser can cut through steel. The difference isn't power, it's focus and coherence. Mental clarity means knowing what matters, why it matters, and what to do next, without confusion, without second guessing, without the fog of information overload. In our always-on, always-connected world, clarity has become a superpower. The people who achieve it consistently operate at a completely different level. Jeff Weiner, former CEO of LinkedIn, was legendary in Silicon Valley for something unusual. He scheduled 90 to 120 minutes of unscheduled buffer time every single day. No meetings, no calls, just thinking space. Most executives see empty calendar blocks as wasted time. Weiner saw them as the most productive time of his day, the time when he processed information, connected dots, made clear decisions, and thought strategically about the business. He called it the difference between operating in the business and working on the business. Mental clarity requires white space. You cannot think clearly when every minute is consumed. Clarity exercise. Every morning, before you open your phone or laptop, answer 3 questions in writing. What is the most important thing I need to accomplish today? What is the biggest obstacle I might face? What is the one decision I've been avoiding that needs to be made? This 5-minute ritual creates a clarity anchor for your entire day. 4 pillars: focus, emotional regulation, resilience, clarity. Build them deliberately, and you have an unshakable mental foundation. Now, let's talk about the greatest threat to all 4. Chapter 3: The War Against Distraction. Chapter 3: The War Against Distraction. Reclaiming your most valuable asset. Here is a number that should stop you cold. 2 hours and 27 minutes. That's the average daily time people spend on social media, according to a 2024 report by Data Reportal. Add to that email, news apps, streaming, messaging platforms, and you're looking at most of modern adults spending the majority of their waking hours consuming content engineered by billion-dollar companies to be as addictive as possible. This isn't an accident.
It's by design. Former Google design ethicist Tristan Harris testified before the U.S. Senate that the attention economy, the system where your eyeballs are the product being sold to advertisers, is a race to the bottom of the brainstem. Companies compete to trigger the most primitive reward circuits in the human brain: novelty, social approval, intermittent reinforcement. The same psychological mechanisms used in slot machines are embedded in your phone's notification system. You are not addicted to your phone because you are weak. You are addicted because teams of brilliant engineers spent billions of dollars figuring out exactly how to make you addicted. Knowing this, you can fight back.
In his book, Indistractable, behavioral designer Nir Eyal outlines the 4 stages of distraction management. Stage 1. Master internal triggers. Most distraction isn't external, it's internal. We reach for our phones not because a notification arrived, but because we feel uncomfortable, bored, anxious, lonely. The phone is an escape hatch from discomfort. Recognizing this breaks the unconscious loop. Stage 2. Make time for traction. Schedule your time proactively, not just work, but rest, relationships, and personal development. If it isn't scheduled, it won't happen. Stage 3. Hack back external triggers. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Remove social media apps from your phone. Create physical distance between yourself and your phone during work hours. These small environmental changes produce disproportionately larger gains. Stage 4. Prevent distraction with pacts. Make agreements with yourself or others that create accountability. A distraction pact could be as simple as putting your phone in another room during a 90-minute deep work session.
Let me introduce you to the concept of attentional residue, a term coined by researcher Sophie Leroy at the University of Minnesota. When you switch from one task to another, part of your attention stays stuck on the previous task. It doesn't fully transfer. Leroy called this residue, and it significantly degrades performance on your new task. This is why multitasking is a myth. What we call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and each switch leaves a residue trail that consumes cognitive resources and reduces output quality. In one of Leroy's experiments, participants who were interrupted mid-task before moving to a new one performed significantly worse on the new task than participants who were allowed to fully complete the first task before switching. The brain needs to reach what psychologists call task completion to fully release attentional resources. Interruption prevents this, and the cognitive cost accumulates across the day. The strategy? Batch similar tasks. Complete tasks fully before switching contexts. Treat each 90-minute deep work block as a sacred, uninterruptible unit. One final concept in this chapter: the power of environment design. Willpower is unreliable. It depletes. It fails. Every human's willpower has a finite daily budget, and modern life is designed to spend it as fast as possible. But environment design is sustainable. When you restructure your physical and digital environment to make good behaviors easier and bad behaviors harder, you remove willpower from the equation entirely. Stanford behavior scientist B.J. Fogg calls this motivation versus ability. Rather than trying to want to focus more, make focusing easier. Put the book on your pillow. Put the phone charger in another room. Put your workout clothes next to your bed. Remove the friction from the behaviors you want and add friction to the behaviors you don't. A high-performing mind is not just about what happens inside your head. It's about the world you build around it. Now, let's talk about the one thing that scares every high performer: pressure.
Chapter 4. stress, pressure, and the high-performance mindset. Chapter 4. Stress, pressure, and the high-performance mindset. There is a version of you that thrives under pressure. You've felt it. In moments of crisis or challenge, something clicks. Time slows, clarity sharpens, instincts take over. Athletes call it the zone. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called it flow. And there is another version of you that crumbles under pressure. The version that freezes during a presentation, panics before a big decision, or collapses into anxiety when life piles on. The difference between these two versions isn't bravery or talent, it's training. And it starts with reframing stress entirely. Health psychologist Kelly McGonigal delivered one of the most watched TED Talks in history, How to Make Stress Your Friend. Her research at Stanford revealed something that upended decades of conventional wisdom about stress. In an 8-year study tracking 30,000 adults in the United States, researchers asked, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? And do you believe stress is harmful to your health? People who experienced high stress and believed stress was harmful had a 43% increased risk of dying. But here's the stunning finding. People who experienced the same high levels of stress but did not believe stress was harmful had no increased risk of dying at all. In fact, they had lower mortality rates than people who had relatively little stress. The conclusion? It wasn't stress that was killing people. It was the belief that stress was killing them.
Your interpretation of your physical stress response changes its biological effect on your body. When your heart pounds before a big presentation, your body is mobilizing energy. When you feel adrenaline in your veins, your body is preparing you to perform. When your breathing quickens, you're getting more oxygen to your brain. These are not symptoms of weakness. They are symptoms of readiness. High performers learn to interpret the stress response as a signal that their body is rising to a challenge. This single cognitive reframe, I'm excited, instead of I'm anxious, measurably improves performance under pressure. Researcher Alison Wood Brooks at Harvard Business School demonstrated exactly this in multiple studies. Simply saying, I'm excited out loud before a stressful task improved outcomes compared to trying to calm down. Excitement and anxiety are physiologically nearly identical. The meaning you assign determines which one you experience. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. J.K. Rowling's manuscript for Harry Potter was rejected by 12 publishers. Walt Disney was fired from his first newspaper job for lacking imagination. Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television by an early network producer.
The commonality isn't that these individuals never faced crushing failure. It's that they processed failure through a specific lens, one that converted setback into data, humiliation into fuel, and rejection into direction. Psychologist Carol Dweck of Stanford University spent decades studying this phenomenon and gave it a name, the growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe their qualities are carved in stone. Intelligence, talent, and ability are what they are. Failure is a verdict on their worth. Challenges are threats to be avoided. People with a growth mindset believe that qualities can be cultivated through dedication and hard work. Failure is information. Challenges are opportunities. Effort is the path to mastery. The research is unambiguous. Growth mindset individuals outperform fixed mindset individuals over time in academics, athletics, business, and relationships, not because they're more talented, but because they respond differently to difficulty. And the best part? Mindset is learnable. In controlled studies, students who received a single 45-minute lesson on neuroplasticity and growth mindset
showed measurably improved academic performance 3 months later.
3 stress management tools for your mental toolkit. Tool 1. Box breathing, used by Navy SEALs before combat. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Repeat 4 times. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system within 60 seconds, physiologically calming your stress response without suppressing performance. Tool 2. Pre-performance ritual. High performers don't leave their mental state to chance before important events. They create deliberate rituals, specific music, physical movements, affirmations, or breathing sequences that reliably trigger peak mental states. Build yours. Tool 3. After-action review. After any significant performance, good or bad, conduct a structured self-assessment. What worked? What didn't? What will I do differently? This converts every experience into learning rather than noise. The U.S. Army has used this framework for decades. It is one of the most powerful feedback loops in existence. Pressure is not the problem. Preparation is the solution.
Chapter 5. Habits, Identity, and the Architecture of a Great Life. Chapter 5. Habits, Identity, and the Architecture of a Great Life. Here is one of the most profound sentences ever written about human behavior. It comes from Will Durant, summarizing Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Read that again. Sit with it. Excellence is not a moment. It is a pattern. It is what you do on Tuesday afternoon when no one is watching and nothing particularly exciting is happening. It is the quiet, unsexy, relentless execution of small disciplines, compounding over time into something extraordinary. James Clear, in his New York Times best-selling book Atomic Habits, makes an insight that is both simple and staggering. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Goals are outcomes you want. Systems are the processes that produce those outcomes. Everyone who has ever failed a New Year's resolution had a goal. The problem was never the goal. It was the absence of a system. The British cycling team is perhaps the most dramatic real-world illustration of this principle. In 2003, British cycling was an embarrassment on the world stage. The team had won a single gold medal in its entire 76-year Olympic history. Bike manufacturers wouldn't even sell their bikes to the British team, fearing it would damage their brand by association. Then David Brailsford became the team's coach. His philosophy? Marginal gains. He believed that if you broke down every element of cycling and improved each element by just 1%, the cumulative effect would be extraordinary. And so the team did. They tested different massage gels to find which produced the fastest muscle recovery. They experimented with which pillow allowed riders to sleep most deeply. They repainted the inside of the team truck white so they could spot dust that might compromise the bikes. They taught riders to wash their hands properly to reduce illness. No single change was remarkable. The system was remarkable. The result? In 5 years, the British cycling team won 60% of the gold medals available at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Then they dominated again at the 2012 London Olympics on home soil. In 10 years, they had become the most successful cycling program in history. 1% improvements. Compounded. System thinking. But here's where James Clear takes it even further, and this is the part that permanently changes people. He argues that the deepest level of behavior change is identity change. There are 3 layers of change. Outcomes, what you get. Processes, what you do. Identity, what you believe about yourself. Most people try to change outcomes first. I want to lose weight. But they haven't changed their
Let me give you the habit framework you can apply immediately. Charles Duhigg's habit loop confirmed about extensive neuroscience. Every habit has 3 components: the cue, the trigger that initiates the behavior, a time, a place, an emotion, a person; the routine, the behavior itself, the automatic action; the reward, the payoff that reinforces the loop, pleasure, relief, satisfaction, or any positive reinforcement. To build a new habit, attach it to an existing cue. Choose a reward you genuinely look forward to. Start with a version of the behavior so tiny it requires almost no willpower. To break a bad habit, disrupt the cue. Change the routine before the craving peaks. Replace the reward with something healthier but equally satisfying. A person who wants to start meditating might cue every morning immediately after pouring their first cup of coffee. Routine: sit in a specific chair for just 2 minutes of breathing. Reward: the coffee itself, allowed only after the 2 minutes are done. 2 minutes is laughably easy. That's the point. The goal for the first month isn't duration. It's consistency. It's the identity vote. It's reinforcing the neural pathway of I am a person who meditates. In 2 months, 2 minutes becomes 5. In 6 months, 5 becomes 20. In a year, the practice is unshakable because the identity has been rebuilt around it.
One final thought before our closing chapter. Everything in this audiobook, the neuroscience, the pillars, the focus strategies, the stress tools, the habits, they all point to a single truth. Your life is not something that happens to you. It is something you architect. The materials are your thoughts, your habits, your identity, and your daily choices. The blueprint is your vision. The construction crew is your discipline and consistency. Not every building gets finished. Not every architect completes their masterwork. But every single day you show up, put a brick on the wall, and refuse to let yesterday's weather stop today's work, you are building something real. Now, let's finish strong. Chapter 6. Your 30-day mental upgrade plan. Start tonight. You've traveled far in this audiobook. You've learned how your brain rewires itself. You've absorbed the 4 pillars of mental strength. You understand the war against distraction. You know how to transform stress into fuel, failure into growth, and habits into identity. Now the question is simple. What are you going to do with it? Here is your 30-day mental upgrade plan. It is deliberately simple. Neuroscience tells us that behavioral change requires low friction. This plan is designed to be started tonight. Not next Monday, not after the holidays, tonight. Week 1. Foundation. Morning ritual. 5 minutes. Wake up. Do not touch your phone. Write 3 answers. What matters most today? What might derail me? What am I grateful for? Evening ritual. 5 minutes. Review your day. 1 win, 1 lesson, 1 intention for tomorrow. Physical anchor. 10 minutes of movement before any screens. Walk, stretch, jump rope. The body activates the mind. Distraction audit. Track every time you reach for your phone out of habit, not necessity. Just awareness, no judgment. Week 2, focus. Introduce 1 90-minute deep work block each day. 1 task, no phone, no browser tabs except what's necessary. Build this habit aggressively. Begin box breathing before any challenging moment. Meeting, difficult conversation, important task. 4 counts in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. Sleep hygiene lockdown. Screens off 60 minutes before bed.
This alone will improve cognitive performance measurably within 2 weeks. The research on sleep and mental performance is unambiguous and overwhelming. Week 3, strength. Add a 5-minute mindfulness practice. Not guided meditation unless you want it. Simply sitting, breathing deliberately, and observing your thoughts without engaging them. This is the gym for your emotional regulation muscle. Begin an end-of-week after-action review every Sunday. 15 minutes. What worked? What didn't? What's the plan for next week? Introduce one growth mindset challenge each week, something you've been avoiding because it's uncomfortable. One difficult conversation, one skill you've been putting off learning, one hard workout. Week 4, integration. Your morning ritual, deep work block, box breathing, and mindfulness practice are now becoming habitual. They require less willpower because the neural pathways are forming. This week, extend one practice you've already started. Go from 90 minutes of deep work to 2 hours. Go from 5-minute mindfulness to 10 minutes. Go from one growth challenge to 2. Begin thinking about identity. Write this statement and put it where you'll see it. I am a person who trains my mind every day. I am building something extra.
We started this audiobook with a question. What if the most powerful weapon you'll ever possess is your mind? I hope by now that question has answered itself. You have 86 billion neurons, neuroplasticity that never stops, the capacity to focus, regulate your emotions, bounce back from anything, and think with clarity in a world that wants to steal all 4 of those abilities from you every single day. You have the 4 pillars, the tools to fight distraction, the framework to transform stress, the architecture of habit, the power to choose your identity. What you do with all of that is entirely up to you.
The best time to train your mind was years ago. The second best time is right now. Go build something extraordinary. Thank you so much for listening to A High-Performing Mind. Strengthen your mind and live your best life. If this audiobook moved you, challenged you, or gave you a single idea you're going to act on, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with one person who needs to hear it. Leave your biggest takeaway in the comments. I read every single one. And I will see you in the next audiobook. Take care of that mind.